On October 5th of 2022, the Alberta government announced that Alberta will be the first province to regulate psychedelic therapy. These new regulations just went into effect on January the 16th, but what exactly is it? What's it for and how is it used exactly? So here to give us some of these answers is Cami Tanner from the Herbal Apothecary in Lethbridge, Alberta. Cami, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you on today. Okay, so Cami, for those of us who don't know, first of all, what is psychedelic therapy and who would benefit from it?
Psychedelic therapy is using things like psilocybin mushrooms to have a psychoactive experience and helping with treating mental health issues.
Okay, I have heard about this before, so now it's regulated for here in Alberta. So how is it administered? Is it literally like taking a psychedelic mushroom or is it in a different way, a different form?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. It's basically doing a trip, but you're doing it under the guidance of a licensed psychiatrist who is licensed to do regulated psychedelic therapy.
Okay, so it's used for mental health, mental illness even?
It is, yep.
Okay, so I've heard about people like going deep into South America and taking part in this in like some little hut. So you're telling me that people can do this now in Alberta. Is it done in a doctor's office? How? Tell me more.
So it will be done in a licensed facility. There are very heavy regulations right now. This is a brand new thing, so we're just kind of feeling our way through this, and things will change and regulations will update as this goes further on. But right now, it has to be done in a licensed facility under a licensed professional.
Okay, so basically, those are the rules. Can you tell us maybe more about the new rules regarding the use of this therapy that has just gone into effect January 16th?
Yeah, so it's not going to be like cannabis dispensaries where you're going to go out and buy magic mushrooms and go home and take them. That's not what this is intending for. This is for heavy mental illness therapy or treating things like PTSD, depression, anxiety that need to be done under the watch of somebody who's licensed to do this, because there's a lot of things that can come up and a lot of things that happen that need to have some guidance to go through these types of healings.
Okay, like a lot of people might think this is very bizarre. So tell me, how can a psychedelic trip suddenly cure your mental illness? It almost doesn't make sense.
There was a lot of research being done in the 40s, 50s, and 60s using psychedelics. But the amazing thing about using psychedelics as opposed to pharmaceuticals have their place, but it's more of a band-aid that's covering up things and just helping people to kind of get through their day and manage the day. But the psychedelics are actually going into the body, changing the neurotransmitters, and psilocybin essentially can reset or reboot the brain so that you can have a new way of thinking and changing your thought patterns.
That's interesting because I remember being a teenager and like your parents kind of preach at you, don't ever try that because it does that, just that. It changes those neurotransmitters, and to us that seemed very like a bad thing to do.
Well, that's why it's necessary to do it under a licensed professional, because they're going to help you change those routes, change those thought patterns in a healthy way.
How exactly?
So when you go through these psychoactive trips, you're going to confront some of these thoughts or thought patterns that you're having, and they can help you walk through to kind of change the way that we're perceiving things and seeing things in a new way, and rerouting the way that we're actually processing those memories or those thoughts.
So is it that the patient in this case takes this mushroom, is tripping, I guess in a licensed facility? Is it almost like there's a psychiatrist with them to talk them through it?
Yep, that's exactly
Okay.
what we're looking at now, is having that psychiatrist within that therapy.
Okay. Have you seen these studies actually become, obviously there's success because the government has now regulated it. So are there any success stories? Do you know of any personally?
Yeah, there's huge success stories. I mean, you can look at Paul Stamets down in the US, who's the huge mycologist, and he's very vocal about his experience with his social anxiety disorders and stuttering. And he did a mushroom trip, and after one dose, he was basically cured. We know people here locally that are, so desperate for this new type of therapy. We've talked to some veterans who are severely suffering from PTSD and have gone decades through this trauma without success through counseling or medication, and gone through one experience with psychedelic mushrooms, and their quality of life has returned back to them.
Okay, so is there a cost to this? Is it private?
We can assume right now that it is going to be a private cost. But when you look at the way that things are now with traditional mental illness treatments, inpatient, outpatient, medication, psychologists, therapies, it can go into the tens of thousands of dollars a month. And usually that's out of pocket, where now we're looking at one psychedelic trip and you have the potential to be healed in that one-time session. So the cost is very, very low compared to traditional methods, even looking at loss of production, or loss of time from having to leave your job for these therapies, and the cost of on the economy that it takes to put those traditional methods out. So it's going to be very cost effective for a lot of patients.
Okay, so how does this stop the average person then from just going out and buying a bag of magic mushrooms and going camping with their? I mean, you kids, when people are young, they have done this, and I mean,
Sure.
are there long-term studies of people who have used drugs in the past and now they have no mental illness because they use these drugs, or is it mostly that coupled with the psychiatrist that they're
I
sitting there
mean,
with?
there's always people that are going to go out and do this on their own, because I think they've done the research themselves and seen the case studies back, like I said, when they were doing it in the 40s and 50s, and going, yeah, there is merit to this, but we just don't have things in place. So they've gone out because it has worked for them, and they've needed those treatments. But I mean, with anything, people are going to do things on their own, but for the most part, it's better to have it done under regulations, because you're going to get the best possible outcome. So that's where this kind of medical treatment plays a part.
That's so interesting. This kind of changes that whole campaign, "Don't do drugs, kids." Right? So, Cami, how does this change with what was already available for Canadians?
This is just going to be another huge tool in the mental illness toolbox, I guess you could say. Um, a lot of people are just not having the best results with those traditional methods. And so we're really excited to be able to have this new tool to work with that studies are showing is working amazing.
Okay. Do you know how long the provincial government has been actually working on this?
It's a little unclear. I know we've been watching the Psychedelic Association of Canada, and they put together a very large memorandum for analysis of regulation, and they submitted that to the Minister of Health back in September of last year. So I think Alberta, it's amazing that they've seen the benefits of this, that they're jumping on board. I think everybody was surprised that Alberta was the first province out of all the provinces who could have chosen this. But we're very excited that Alberta is the first province, and that they see the benefit of it, and that they are moving forward to try and do something better than what hasn't been working before.
Is this some sort of a transformative moment in healthcare for Canadians? It almost sounds like it is.
I think a lot of people, when that announcement came out, were cheering. We're very excited.
Wow. Okay, so can you maybe describe the difference then between psychedelic therapy and psilocybin mushrooms, or are they the same thing?
It's the same thing. So psilocybin mushrooms are psychedelic. So the psilocybin is what is the chemical compound in the mushroom, and when we ingest that, the body turns it to psilocin, which is the psychoactive compound, which allows you to hallucinate and, affects your senses and your way of thinking. So it is the exact same thing.
Okay. Is this like all natural, or has this been like chemically sort of changed in a lab?
This is all natural. I mean, you can chemically produce it in a lab, but we are looking with our company Pharmasil to produce these mushrooms and grow them naturally in a very controlled environment. But that's the beautiful thing, is this is natural. It works harmoniously with the body and doesn't really affect long-term side effects like medications can.
Interesting. Okay, I was actually just going to get to your company, Pharmacell, when you mentioned it there. So yeah, so I understand you and your husband own Herbal Apothecary in Lethbridge, but you've now started this separate company, Pharmacell, to
Yeah,
help
I mean, we're
Albertans with.
big
Is it basically to help?
Pharmasil, yeah. So we're big believers in plant medicine and healing the body through natural means. Medicine is great; it has its place, but we've seen the detriments and the downfalls to pharmaceuticals and long-term effects of people not being able to get off medications, or lots of side effects. And so we actually started our application process back in November of 2021, and submitted our application early 2022. So we were well ahead of the game before we even knew that regulations were going to be coming out, because we believed so much in it and knew that this was going to be something that was really important to Canadians to help with their mental health.
Wow, that's so interesting that you've been looking at this for so long and been working on this for so long, and now here it is, and you didn't even know that Alberta would be regulating it. That's
No, not at all.
wow. Okay, so what do you think is the motivation to use this new medical option? You're mentioning mental illness, but are we talking about? You mentioned PTSD, but could it cure a depression, anxiety, those types of things?
Yeah, that's what it's great for. And so we also have to remember that the regulations, it doesn't just include the psilocybin, but it's also LSD, ketamine, mescaline, and MDMA. So they all kind of play different parts within the brain and do certain things. But psilocybin, yes, for sure, is going to help with PTSD and a lot of stress and anxiety disorders, which um, it has been increasing, but ever since COVID-19, we have just seen mental illness kind of go off the charts. And so there are studies out there that shows that Canada is, I think it's ranked third or fourth in the world for antidepressant users. So that just kind of shows the monumental amount of mental illness that is happening. We're in crisis mode, and we need other tools to help deal with this crisis.
Okay, so Cami, I know here in Lethbridge we have a lot of issues with opioids, but just out of curiosity, would these mushrooms be maybe an option for replacing opioid in some cases, or maybe even helping with the damage that opioids have possibly done?
Yeah, so this is not going to be a replacement for opioids. However, these psychedelic therapies can actually help with addiction recovery. They've shown a lot of promise in helping people with addictions to opioids.
Cami, are there possibly other uses outside of the realm of mental illness that this could be used for?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of people, when faced with end of life diseases like cancer, things like that, that are fearing death. They actually can take a psilocybin mushroom trip, and it brings a calmness and releases a lot of that anxiety when being faced with death in the end of their life. So it's it's a wonderful tool in a lot of different ways.
Okay, so it's more of a calming method mentally, not necessarily it's going to physically do anything.
Yeah, it helps them not be so afraid of death. Yeah.
So maybe like let's switch away from the psychedelic mushroom therapy. And I know you have a lot of expertise with herbal options and remedies with herbal apothecary. So can you tell us what makes mushrooms in their various forms so beneficial?
Yeah, so we already grow a lot of functional medicinal mushrooms. And it's funny because these mushrooms have been used for thousands of years as healing and as medicine. And we got away from them when pharmaceuticals came into play, and it just kind of show, you can see how our health has deteriorated. And so getting back to a natural way is really quite amazing and really beneficial. And a lot of people are wanting to go back to a natural way because it actually heals the body. It doesn't just put that band-aid on, so to speak. And people are seeing a lot of changes within using medicinal mushrooms to problems that they're having.
Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so lion's mane is a great one for brain health. There's been a lot of studies done with lion's mane mushroom that has actually on a lot of use of it that has reversed symptoms of Alzheimer and dementia. We have a lot of people that come in using reishi mushroom to help them with sleeping habits and stress and anxiety.
Wow.
So they all do really, really wonderful things. And, it's kind of funny, the old saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But
Right.
we fixed it and now we're broken again. So
Wow. It's interesting how the world works. It looks like we are running out of time, Cami. Very fascinating topic, though. I've learned a lot from you, so I thank you for that. And thanks so much for coming on today.
yes, and thank you for having me. It's always great to share new knowledge.
Awesome. That was Cami Tammer from the Herbal Apothecary in Lethbridge, Alberta. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks so much for watching.